Hello and welcome to the first episode of OC Chats here on Nick Reads Fanfiction. I'm your host Nick, and on today's show I'll be talking to you about what OC Chats is all about before moving on to our topic of the show, creating an OC for the anime manga Fairy Tail. Alright, let's start with an explanation of what OC Chats is exactly. OC Chats is a short podcast where I talk to you, the viewers, about creating an original character for a certain fandom, such as Naruto, Fairy Tail, etc, etc. I'll be covering a range of topics to do this, such as understanding the fandom's world, what to expect when creating an OC for that world, and a range of other topics that I feel will help. However, to improve the show, I would like to hear your questions and opinions on creating original characters for the fandom talked about on the show. You can do this in the comments below or on Nickreadsfanfiction's Twitter page. By doing this, I can tailor the show to make its content different and helpful for every listener. Right, show explained. Now let's move on to the topic of this week's podcast, creating an original character for the manga/anime Fairy Tail. It's a large beast to tackle, newbie or veteran, so let's focus for now about understanding the world of Fairy Tail. Now, understanding the world you're about to throw your character into is a big part of making your OC work in any fan fiction. And the reason most OCs made for Fairy Tail don't work out or join the thousands out there looking for their place is because the author does not have a clear understanding of its world's limitations. One limitation, for example, is the fact that in Earthland it is recorded only 10% of its population can use magic, a fact many writers do tend to ignore. Why? Well, I have some thoughts on that matter. First, I believe writers ignore the fact because the canon anime and manga focuses so heavily on magic users that fanfiction writers only see their characters being interesting to audience if they use magic. Plus, it's very clear that the attraction of creating an OC in the Fairy Tail world is to be able to use magic. After all, can a mercenary who swings a plain old sword be as interesting in such a world? Well, that leads me to my second belief, that most writers, and I include myself in this because I am guilty of this too, don't tend to go off the blade path. What I mean by this is we follow the canon story because that's what others want to see. They want to see how your OC reacts to that canon event, and see how they come out of it, maybe stronger or emotionally scarred for life. It's an aspect of fan fiction I personally would like readers and other writers to step away from and perhaps embrace other stories that focus away from the canon, perhaps looking at being a member of Mermaid Heel, or a part of the Seven Wolves, which does not follow the canon story. However, I feel that's a topic for another OC's chats. For now, let's get back to understanding the world of Fairy Tail. We now know the big fact that most people ignore, and why. But what about the place in the world? I'm sure we all know loads about the Fairy Tail Guild and other large important areas, such as the Tower of Heaven. But what about other locations, like the port town of Harjion, or even Oaktown? Understanding such places can give an OC a real standout quality. And I say this because I stumble across many original characters whose homes have been destroyed, or have they been born in Magnolia Town, or comes from far, far away land no one has ever heard about. And I just think, why? Why can't we have a character being from Oaktown? The only answer I can find is authors fearing that it would make their character boring, when most want them to be mysterious or to be close to Fairy Tail, so there's a link to the guild. But still, even after this, I say, why not? What about the old saying of that heroes come from the most unlikely places? Not only does it make it easier for readers to connect with that character because he or she is from a place they know, but they're not shown every day. It also gives the author the chance to show off their understanding of the town and give the character some clean-cut background that doesn't make them, dare I say it, Mary Sues, who suddenly know the area well due to their epic travelling time alone, when really, being the son or daughter of a fisherman is, in my mind, more interesting and can explain how they know the people in the town and its layout. So, how can you find this information, you ask? After all, Earthland is a huge place. Well, I suggest taking a look around the Fairy Tail Wikipedia. That's both the official and the fan-made one. I also suggest talking to other fans on sites such as fanfiction.com, as some of them are very helpful with information that others may consider trivial. I also suggest taking some time to study the town in the anime manga itself, taking notes on what you see and linking it to real life. For example, being a port town, Harjion Town will have a port, meaning the town will need more inns for their captains and crew to stay in. This in turn means there will be some shops, which will have rare items from these ships. It's also good to consider the fact that people in Harjion Town may be not even residents, but holidaymakers, or from other kingdoms searching for work. Now, we've covered some information about understanding the towns of Fairy Tale. There are still some things to consider. One being the other jobs of the world, the mercenaries, the merchants and the thieves. These are all important parts of the world, and an author needs to understand if they're going to pit their OC against them or be with them. Let's for example take the mercenaries. Most mercenaries in Earthland are seen as rough, rude and have a hate for mages because they clash so often on contracts. But, like the mages, they also have their own joining conditions and payment methods, such as if you want to join the wolves you must be able to lift XXX amount of pounds, or rewards on contracts are split 50-50 between the team and the guild. They're very much part of the economy system of the kingdom and how it works, making them either great foes or allies. But how does this affect my OC creation, you ask? Well, let's say a merchant character to hire a team of mages to defend his cart may cost about, and this is a rough guess from looking at the jewel section on the Fairy Tale Wikipedia, 50,000 jewels, because it's harder than mining for crystals, which is based at 40,000 jewels. Now, consider that a mercenary guild is willing to do the job for 20,000 jewels. Which one is the money-making merchant going to choose? Most mercenaries can fight monsters and mages, therefore making them a cheaper protection for the merchant, allowing him to keep more of his profit. Now, did I really just pull such an idea out of my hat? Yes, I did. But wasn't it interesting to think about, as we as writers tend to skip over such minute things, missing out the finer details which could give a whole new perspective of Earthland for our stories. Again, such information could be used as a plot, or even the backstory of your OC, giving you as a writer a lot to work with without ever following the canon story, which in turn allows you to freedom to write and explore your story and character. Still, we cannot ignore the mazes of this world, and as such, I move on to talk about dragon slayers and god slayers. Creating these types of characters in the world of Fairy Tale does need authors to have an understanding of the world, because without it, your OC may just join the ranks of millions, if not trillions, of dragon slayers and god slayers, already trying to find their place into the heart of Fairy Tale. In the current fanfiction state of Fairy Tale, I imagine every time you turn a corner, you'd either bump into a dragon slayer or a god slayer, making them more common than regular mages. But is it really that big a deal to understanding the world? Yes and no. In my experience as a fanfiction writer, most readers I can say are willing to shut their eyes to let dragon slayers and god slayer OCs into the stories. However, they need to be extremely different from the dragon slayers already in the fandom and not share anything in common with them to be accepted. That, I know, is a big undertaking for a creator to take. But it's the key to stop them falling into the "oh no, it's another dragon slayer" complaint. So, how can understanding the world help with creating a dragon slayer or god slayer OC? It's rather simple. For a start, let's take a look at, dare I say it, in a mathematical view. Let's say the world of Earthland holds 10,000 people. This is a guess, as I'm sure Earthland holds more than the number I use on this show. So that's 10,000, and now 10% of them can only use magic. So let's do some maths here, and our answer is 1,000. Oh well, I hear you say, that's still a lot of people, and I agree, for non-dragon slayers and god slayers. Now let's take into account how many dragon slayers and god slayers we have. 5 taught by dragons, 2 implemented dragon slayers, 1 dragon itself, and god slayers magic currently holding about 3. So that's 10. But for the sake of this show, let's take out our dragon friend, because not many people want their OCs to be death-bringing dragons. So that's 9 out of 1,000, meaning that 0.9% of people are dragon slayers and god slayers in the world. But as we know, Lactus and Cobra are not, in fact, true dragon slayers. That puts the percentages down to become a poor 0.7%, which makes sense since these types of magic are rare, old, and are only passed down by dragons themselves or old masters. Understanding this, we then need to know that there can be no more than one type of dragon slayer or god slayer, meaning that any author who thought having another Natsu around isn't obeying by the world's rules. But as always, there is a few exceptions. We could say that Lactus and Cobra's dragon slayers counterparts, e.g. the real dragon slayers, were either killed and their magic put into the men, or the slayers gave a part of their magic willingly and are still wandering around Earthland. I hear the cries of happiness because finally you can have a dragon slayer or god slayer OC. Well, hold on. Because if we say that the lightning and poison dragon slayer are still alive and out there, then their lives would not be so open and free. I say this because in the world, Such magic is sought after by both good and evil, meaning a known dragon slayer would either be forced or convinced to join guilds due to their history of being powerful mages, or if not, the magic council could label them as a danger to the land and have them destroyed. And yes, it would also go for god slayers too. Still, perhaps after that little slayer talk, it's time we pay some attention to the mages who are not dragon slayers or god slayers, but normal mage wizards, and see how the world affects them. Well, I think the best place to start really is mages that dual wield magic. It's a big issue in the world of fairy tale, as most mages specialise in one magic, because in order to learn magic one must train spirit and intellect. Now I can hear already crying out, my character is a genius from a young age, so he/she has the brain power to dual wield multiple spells. To which I accept. However, consider this bit of information from the Wikipedia of fairy tale. It should be noted that the stronger the magic, the more it tends on selecting its welder. If the mage's mind is fragile, then the magic will take over and destroy them. What does this mean to your character? Well, let's say your mage learns to wield both ice and fire, because hey, who doesn't want to mix up a bit of grey and Natsu? Now, let's apply our little fact that the stronger the magic, the more it tends on selecting its user. So it's the mage's mind is fragile and the magic will take over and destroy them. This would mean that the original character would be profound in using high level spells in one type of magic, but for the other one may only be able to cast basic spells. That, and we also have to consider that magic is all around Earthland, meaning that take too much in and well, pop goes the mage. Still, the only way I could see around this matter is perhaps your character being the age of Master Mavrock. But again, the world suggests most famous mages specialise in one type of magic, and really most people don't want their OCs to be their grandfather's age, because most reflect closer to its creator's age more often than not. It's a little complex, but the rules of the world stand, so dual-wielding mages OCs might have to think of a way around this. But the world of fairy tale is a very large place, with still unknown features we have yet to learn, so the answer may be sometime in the future. Yet for now, it's these rules of the world we writers must take into consideration before we put pen to paper to create an adventure for our readers to enjoy. And hopefully, now we've covered some of these bases in this chat, we can understand the big facts about the world's population, to the chance of an OC being a god slayer or dragon slayer, the little towns which could make a difference, and of course, dual wielding mages in the world of fairy tale. So with that under our mage belt, next week I'll talk about the traps and stereotypes most OC creators fall into and how to avoid doing so when creating an OC for fairy tale. Plus, I'll talk about some of the comments left on the video and on Twitter. But till then, fanfiction writers and readers, I've been Nick, and thank you for listening.